Hello.
Hi there.
I'm going to keep eating peanuts for a little bit.
I've finished my dal. My mouth is tingling with ginger.
You're not supposed to eat chocolate before you go on radio. Have you heard that?
No, it's your
For people listening that are enjoying that, it's like
mucus, very mucusy. Lovely. My feet are still tingling. Are yours?
No.
No.
It's been a bit of a barefoot week.
We've been barefooting a lot this week, and what better?
It's a barefoot.
That's a dad joke.
Yeah.
Yes. And, we often talk about practitioner burnout and what to do to look after yourself and all that kind of shemizzle. I'm adding to my list of things to look after yourself, barefooting in the woods, in your place of work, wherever you are. Take your shoes off if you can and walk around in the mud. Because, honestly, like today, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do it today. I'm not quite in the mood. It's just a bit like meh. Everything's just a bit meh. I might not do it. And then you do it, and then you're like, ah, la la, everything is amazing. It's so great. And then you're like, oh yeah, all those good bacteria are going into my body, and I'm not going to get depressed. And so, as well as the feeling of elation of having done it and it getting all cold, so we've been having buckets of warm water and then a bit of conker soap, just very diluted in the water with all the bubbles. It's very nice, and it's a nice experience.
It makes me as well feel very self-assured about who I am and like the forest schooliness about me,
right?
In that, just like being barefoot, and maybe there's a bit of like not performance to it, but that like, we are, as we know, quite far along that spectrum, and you're working with parents and or children or whatever that are, to them to see someone barefoot that's not on the beach is crazy. And it makes
grown up anyway.
And it makes me sort of. It's a bit like putting on war paint. But you're just going like, no, I'm not going to wear shoes.
And today, lots of parents did it, and it was so joyful. It was a really lovely collective experience, wasn't it? That there was a tiny baby in the mud with her little toes out, and lots of parents and us, and it was really, really nice. And it sort of shakes you out of your normal way of thinking and being. Yeah,
slows you down. We both said so. We've been barefooting, and we did it in the kindergarten, and because our site is. There's a couple of chestnut trees around, and right now, we've picked the worst time of year to do it.
I don't think so. I think it's a good time of year because it's still not too cold, but there's lots of mud.
But there's chestnuts around on the floor. But anyway,
you can see them. They're bright green right now.
But we said it made us very intentional about where we were walking, because it's a bit more effort to place your feet and to go, right, I'm going to go over to that area now. Plump, 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 plump. Yep. You're not just sort of dipping in and out. You're sort of intentionally...
Yeah, you're not shambling along in your big wellies or big boots. You're, and you notice how your muscles work completely differently, and you are walking much more like a kind of animal, I guess, more like a fox. A fox walking of putting the ball of your foot first, which is supposed to be a much healthier way of walking and running anyway, isn't it? But you find yourself naturally doing that barefooting on a rough, weird terrain.
Enough niceties.
Rebellion.
We must fight. You and I must fight.
We decided to do a podcast on activism because it is in the news and it is happening now. And we were thinking about just our role as forest school leaders or those that work in the outdoors with nature, with children. Where is our role within this zeitgeist of activism that is happening? Is it something that we should take part in? Is it something that, many of us do, and why, and what it all means? So I
think partly, and it's worth noting that when we're talking about activism now, we're talking about a specific topic in that we're talking about this climate change. We're not talking about.
Well, I don't know. Could we extend
we might
it?
but that's the relevant one to now, and there's lots of protests now. Whether we do, because climate change is so linked to forest school, it would be a different discussion if it was like, should we be marching on voting rights of another country? That's a different question to forest school is linked very closely to climate change and the environment, and we all feel like we've got this thing in it. So, but we sit on different parts of this spectrum, don't we? So I am. I'm not anti-protesting. I don't protest. That's the simplest way to say it. Is I have not yet been motivated sufficiently to feel like it's the thing that I need to go and do.
And you think that is the key to it, is that you haven't been motivated enough. It's not that you think that it's pointless, it's just that you haven't felt that kind of fire in your belly to go out and do it.
I guess so. And I think it's I mean, we're talking in different things, aren't we? Because you can talk about it professionally. Should your forest school company be standing up for this? And then you've got the other side of it. It's personally, should you do this thing?
But I guess if you do run your own business and your own forest school, which we are lucky enough to do, then those things are much closer together. You know, if you were working in a school and you're employed by a school, then the decision to go and protest is more personal. Whereas if you run your own company, therefore you've got the freedom to go, we're closing today because we're all going on this march, or do you know what I mean? I'm going to make...
I do and I don't, because I do think one of the pieces of advice that I would give to people who are starting their forest school business, and lots of them do independently, you know, it's just one person going around doing this stuff, and I would always say it's worth having a bit of professional distance between what your company does and what you do, and being able to pivot on that to make compromises that, you know, a company can make compromises or has a reputation to uphold that you personally do or don't.
But I feel that it's just so linked with our job. A bit in some ways, like anything working with children, you know, there's so many kind of things that you can't really either do or share about your personal private life if you are you know, you're so aligned. I was reading a chapter in that Critical Issues of Forest Schools book about gender and identity, and the kind of profound difference that you feel in your identity in forest school when you stop using your teacher name. You know, you're like Sir or Miss. So if you're at school, if you're a class teacher that then also does forest school, and you leave your professional classroom name behind and you are known as Lewis or Raven Feather,
that is
Windstorm, or whatever you choose your name to be. And where was my point with this? I can't remember.
Stepping away, different personal, sharing your personal life as a teacher.
Yeah, and it's so when you're a forest school leader, you are just Gemma or Lewis, which obviously there is still an element of like, I am stepping into my role as leader, but that I feel personally anyway that role is more just how I naturally am, and the longer I do it, the more I feel, probably because my self has changed a bit to be more aligned with my forest self, but also the more I do my forest self, the more relaxed I become, and it becomes closer to me, and it's more honest, and so therefore I don't really feel like there is that much difference between my personal life and my forest life. Do you know what I mean? And I think I could say that from an outside point of view for you as well, in terms of, I don't know, I can't quite describe it.
I think I try to as much. I mean, I think we'll get to the activism, but I try to as much as possible personally to have as little ego as I can in terms of, and I don't mean that in terms of like ego, like big-headedness, ego in terms of like defining myself and going, oh, I am this and I am that, or I'm not that, and I just kind of. I've moved into a place where I try to refer to things more as like, well, at the moment I'm doing that, or right now I'm doing that, and lots, you know, it's almost that the opposite of like tribalism of that, you know, we are this and we're against that and we're doing this, but as a company you do have to have hard standpoints and that's separate to me. I would kind of go, oh, okay, you know, that's a way of doing it, but as a company you present a face, and the choices that you make are, you know, a company is ego. A company needs a reputation and things that it stands for, and to shout it from the rooftops, and, you know, do that Facebook thing where you don't write like, here's some pictures of what we did today. You write like, we were jumping in the mud and it was glorious, and look at us and we're lovely, and you know, that stuff. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I sit with it, being slightly other than me, which is where I think, does the company do stuff that's activism? I think the company does. So you know, we promoted that you were going to the climate march in, where did you go, Tivy?
Exeter.
And you know, and we talk about it, and sometimes it comes up in discussions here, but me personally, I haven't gone to any of those things, and I think it comes down to, from where I am right now and the things that I've read at the moment, I think that lobbying for like systematic change and legislative change, this is getting real heavy, is the resort that you need for a broken system. You know, a system where you're going, we don't have an option but to buy plastic bottles, so what we need is legislation that says blah blah blah. And I think I sit a bit more on this idea that capitalism works because we vote every time we buy something, or every time we go with a company. That is a vote. That is a standing up and saying, I will financially support this, or I will not financially support this. And I feel a little bit that asking for legislative change, if you're not already doing the other things that you could personally, if you're not already manipulating capitalism to your advantage, to your ethical advantage, let's say, then asking for legislative change without doing those other things is a bit, nanny state is the wrong term, but it's a bit like going to a personal trainer and asking them to run on the treadmill for you because you can't do it.
I know what you mean, but I think that there's definitely... So Extinction Rebellion will say it's all very well each of us stopping using single plastic, and it's all very well using like a reusable water bottle or cycling to work, and that's great, and like keep on doing that. But we have been made to feel by our current system personal guilt that it's all our fault.
It's the
and
end,
if you
end
don't
of the
do
funnel.
that, and like the way you're going to save the world is to do that, and you bought another piece of plastic the other day, so you need to like go and wear your horsehair shirt and whip yourself because you're evil. When actually those things are like a drop in the ocean, and what you're looking at is the things that actually aren't the things that you can vote on with your money. They are the massive corporations that are burning fossil fuels and aren't using a green alternative. They're not, do you know what I mean? They're a thing where it's so much bigger than us. It's like little ants, you know, it's like we're the ants down here scurrying around worrying about all the little everyday things we do. Well, above us, too big for us to even see, there are huge corporations that aren't even being taxed properly, making decisions and doing all these things and being allowed to get away with it because of the way our government works. And so that is kind of the point of Extinction Rebellion, that you aren't supposed to feel personally guilty, that it's completely non-judgmental. So you might see somebody as part of the rebellion sitting there and eating a Pret a Manger sandwich, and journalists and people who disagree with the movement will go, see, look at them eating that
holier than thou,
and they probably drove here in their like fancy car, and they do things like newspaper articles on how much their houses are worth, like the big people in Extinction Rebellion. It's like, actually that's got absolutely nothing to do with it. It's about bigger than personal choice. It's not about blaming anybody or shaming anybody. It's about going, we want alternatives that are bigger than us on an individual level. Go on.
Well, I was going to say, I think part of maybe it's that I'm jaded in that I don't, deep down, I don't believe that it will lead to change.
Yeah.
So that's just at the moment, from what I see, it to me looks like the hot topic that will do this. But I don't see. But I guess because what's being asked for is large scale sweeping legislation and whatever else. What I don't see is long-term lifestyle change. And that my thought would be that if you, let's say you completely rid the UK of single-use plastics, and we do this, and we overnight we do this thing, but you haven't looked at the whole system. We haven't looked at like the need for it, or the and I know that part of it is that you put legislation 20 years ahead so that companies have got time to ramp up and all this stuff. But I think what I would imagine, and again it could be jaded, is that you'll have this big movement. Everybody will go and do their thing and champion the champions and all this stuff, and then if it's just legislation can be undone by the next government or by successive governments. But a lifestyle change where a country or people move and make different decisions, and that's where I think we do more good slowly championing this grassroots forest school, nature connection, get outside and actually...
But why not both? Because I kind of feel like, as well, I feel sort of like a person, in the same way that you're saying things, you've got to think about the future and legislation can be undone and all the rest of it. So I feel personally a little bit of like, well, if you believe in this cause, which I do, I kind of feel like I've got a bit of a duty in my professional and personal life to go and join in whatever way I can, because I am showing both my own children and those children and families that we work with that it's important. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, here is a thing I can do, and I think a lot of the protesters are getting a bad name in that way, that they're going, oh, you just want to feel that, like, oh, here I am, I'm like marching along, and you just feel all great and worthy, and actually, like, you're making it, maybe there's no lasting change as a result of what you're doing. But in another way, I kind of feel like that almost doesn't matter. You are you're like a kind of flag, showing people of the future and people now that it is important and it is a thing that people really care about. And there's stuff been written on both sides about whether or not activism does create change. There's read an article in New Yorker about how activism recently hasn't led to much change at all, but has it meant to? So the kind of female march in America, the anti-Trump stuff, and here, the women's marches, that wasn't really necessarily demanding change. It was more about awareness, and therefore it is going to change people's behaviour on an individual level because the awareness is spreading. See what I mean? So the more coverage Extinction Rebellion get, maybe that will make no change in the government, but maybe it will make people who've never thought about making small changes, make them go, oh, what is that? What are those weird people dressed in red with the white faces? Like, what actually is that? Oh, right, okay, well, they look a bit mad, but yeah, maybe I could do something. Do you see what I mean? So it's like a flag waving in the wind and just going, we all kind of care about it. But and there's that figure about 3.5% of the population being involved in activism.
That's the tipping point.
That's the tipping point. And it's quite interesting that they're talking about the civil rights movement and stuff historically seemed to be far more effective in terms of bringing about legislative change, and the New Yorker article was asking about why that was, and they were talking about it being far better planned, it having a core crew of very wise people running the show, and so apparently Rosa Parks wasn't the first woman to do the thing on the bus. There was a teenager who did it like several months before, but they were like, she's not the right poster girl for this campaign, she can't stand up to media scrutiny, she's not the right person, so we're going to let this one slide, we're not even going to talk about it. So she did it, but we're not going to do press releases and photographs and marches and rallies. We're going to wait for the right person to come along. Rosa Parks comes along, and they're like, yes, she's the face of this campaign, now we're going to go for it. And it was much more kind of coordinated, and I'm not necessarily saying that Extinction Rebellion isn't, but it is very it's democratic, and they're looking for people to take on certain roles, but it is a democratic movement of people rather than a little core crew of like 5 people who are experts in various fields, and that this article is making that point, that that's why it used to be effective and it isn't so much anymore. There's a really vicious article written by Brendan O'Neill. So if you support Extinction Rebellion and you want to feel a bit angry, you can find his article online. It's called The Madness of Extinction Rebellion, and he basically calls it an upper middle class death cult, and we should ridicule it out of existence. And there's like a grain of truth in there about the talking heads that you often see on the news, and you look at those people and you're like, well, he makes this point like, oh, they're asking people to take 2 weeks off work to come and support this rebellion, and like, who can afford to do that? Only wealthy people, and they don't actually speak for all of us, they speak for a minority, and there they all are chanting and talking about the end of days. And he's saying it's like a cult, it's like a kind of religion.
But Extinction Rebellion is asking for a lot of non-participatory support. I think I might have made that word up there.
No?
But they a lot of the information that I've been seeing around them has been, if you can't get down to London or to your nearest centre, this is how you can help financially, this is what you can send, you can put this stuff up. And I get, I just, would you, I guess it's kind of, if there was one nearby, which there was, if there was another one nearby, I guess it's, maybe I'm loath to say what other people should be doing. And when you talk about from personally going and doing those things, personally I'm going to go and tie myself to the bridge. There's no implication that anyone else should do it. You know, you're going, I stand up for this, I am the flag, let's go and do this. But I think if you shift that onto a company doing it, and particularly a company or an organisation like Forest School, where we have an element of faith put on us by the parents and by the community that we, not that we run, but we orchestrate the community, don't we? And so in saying like Children of the Forest is going to whatever demonstration, I would worry that is a step further than I would want it to be, in terms of saying that, you know, the whole toddler group should be there because that's where we're doing it today. And like, you know, it's a bit if I think of it as like a tribe and a village and we're orchestrating it, it's a very different role to saying the tribe is going to this thing based on a decision that we don't, you know, you and I make this decision, but we don't necessarily put it out to all of the parents in the community and say, hey, all of the parents of toddler groups and Saturday groups and all the festivals, what do we think? Are Children of the Forest going? You know, we're not doing it democratically, and that's where I feel like I'm absolutely up for people doing things personally, but I do feel like we as Forest School leaders are leading a community, and perhaps that our community is better served either by saying, you know, sort of saying this is on, if it is of interest to you, it ties to what we're doing, but saying the tribe is not necessarily packing up and moving. You know? I guess that's kind of clarified for me as I was talking, the difference between personally doing something and professionally doing something.
It's about bringing politics into your, you know, you're in a powerful role either as a teacher or a Forest School leader, aren't you? About kind of influencing people and all the rest of it. And there's a certain amount of kind of responsibility with that. And there's endless discussions about teachers and bringing politics into the classroom. And frequently teachers are accused of being real lefty socialist, you know, brainwashing and stuff about sexuality as well, you know, the kind of promotion of homosexuality through talking about gay relationships, and, you know, thankfully times are changing on that. But it's a really weird grey area because you don't really, I certainly didn't get any stuff on that in my teacher training. In safeguarding, obviously it comes up in terms of like extremist views, isn't it? In terms of if you're looking for your staff and doing their DBS and checking for like, extremist views, and they include everything from, you know,
animal rights activism is in there.
And it's interesting to see the future of that with Extinction Rebellion, because part of they've got an amazing website with lots of information about like what are you prepared to do if you are prepared to get arrested, here's what might happen, what are the implications of being arrested. And so there are implications obviously on your DBS checks, you're working with children, but there's no hard and fast rule about that. It's going to be up to your employer. They might give you the opportunity to explain the circumstances surrounding your arrest, and they might go, okay, absolutely fair enough, that's nothing to do with
it, might even be children. A plus, you know.
But there may be some organisations that might go, nope, you have a criminal record, you are not working with us anymore. So there's that to factor in as well if you are thinking of going and like seriously gluing yourself to something or whatever. But there's nothing in your teacher training that says you should remain neutral, you shouldn't talk about your political beliefs, you shouldn't try to...
Oh, I had some.
I don't think I had anything. And obviously you make that judgment call. So when I was teaching and the Brexit referendum was happening, I wanted to talk about it because I kind of feel like you've got a duty as your role, so it was with my tutor group, to talk about politics and to discuss it and to try and do that in as neutral a way as possible. But can you ever do that? Can you ever be truly neutral? The tone of your voice as you're discussing certain people.
Well, just the fact that
ideas.
You are the teacher, it puts you in a different place.
Completely.
And one of the things that happened to me when I was teaching was I was told I wasn't allowed to tell any of the children at the school that I was vegan, because it was deemed that was like an abuse of my.
So weird, isn't
you know, it just that they went, look, you're in a role model position, let's say, and anything you say will be taken as not perhaps gospel, but more highly credible than whatever else.
Weird.
But I guess one of the things that's also true is perhaps it's me being what's the word? Not selfish. Perhaps I'm being like reserved and sort of safeguarding a little bit in that my worry with big public things like this, like the student marches. So I went personally on the student marches.
Against what? When?
It was the I can't remember it now. Was it the
War in Iraq?
No, it was the tuition fees.
Oh, okay.
That one.
Yeah.
When what's his name from Pink Floyd, his kid threw stuff off a building, and that's maybe not twinged it, but like my experience was that there was this very positive thing of we're all going to go and we're all going to say, look, we can't afford this, and because of some outliers in that group, the whole movement gets branded with. So, like you were saying, that the girl on the bus couldn't stand up to scrutiny, and I guess it's like if you go personally, and the movement is tarnished in some way. Let's, there's a paedophile ring, there's a court case, someone's been sexually harassing, whatever it is that tarnishes that brush. If you personally put yourself in it, people are, I think, a lot more forgiving of then saying, oh right, yeah, I was part of that, and then it wasn't a thing. If you go, oh yeah, I did go with. I'm not assuming it's happening to Extinction Rebellion, but let's say, oh, you went to some Extinction Rebellion marches, and then in a couple of weeks' time, it comes out that some of the head people are horrendous, racist, whatever, and then you go, oh yeah, I've kind of stepped away from that because of what I found out. But I think that is harder to do for a company or a community because it's almost like this. The paper trail for companies and for communities is a lot more set in stone. Of like, oh really? You told we told everybody to go and do that thing, and then they turned out to be not. Oh my goodness! Whereas doing small scale nature.
That's the same with any causes. And you make a good point, and it reminds me of my shoebox war. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Do you want to tell that story?
I will. Maybe I've told it before. But our local school was sending the shoeboxes to the poor children, but they were doing it through the company called Samaritan's Purse, which, if you do a bit of research, is based in America and are a very right-wing, fundamental Christian organisation, homophobic, racist, etc., and are using it sort of a bit like a missionary project to send shoeboxes mainly to Islamic countries, and you hand over the shoebox with a leaflet about God and Jesus, and you've accepted this gift now, child, here's the word of Jesus. So this is what I've read. Apologies if you support this organisation. Do a bit of reading. There's some stuff on the Humanist website about it. There are other shoebox schemes that aren't run by right-wing fundamentalist Christians.
Tangent over.
And so I pointed out to the school this information, and that my family wouldn't be supporting this, and would they be doing any other charities? And oh my goodness, like the stink that was caused, it just really upset a lot of people because they weren't aware of it. The school had been like really shouting from the rooftops about this organisation and this scheme for many years, and then it just obviously really upset a lot of people. And I sort of go, oh, I really don't mean to upset people, but here's the reading, here are the articles, this is how I found out about it, and here's some alternatives, like here's a Christian, here's an organisation that is also Christian. If you want to, it's Church of England School, they chose to support a Christian charity, that's fine. Here is a Christian charity that does it in a fairer, kinder, nicer way. But the school have been putting their name to that charity, and they did end up stopping doing it, even though they kind of took down my comments and basically. Right. shamed me. But they did stop doing it. But that must have kind of hurt.
So that is a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And whereas I feel much more comfortable sticking my flag in what we do and going, I know this because there's traceability to what there's traceability. I know what I do personally and what we do here and whatever. I've got a reasonable idea of what goes on when you're not here, but do you know what I mean? I feel much safer.
Oh, then he found out that Gemma was actually accountable.
Yeah.
In her own
but
home.
We'll cut this bit out.
She was
so no one will hear.
sacrificing people, and I've
but
kind
you know,
of
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Kind of, I feel safer doing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's cowardice is the word. Maybe it's cowardice on my part to say I would rather do a slowly catchy monkey.
Yeah.
We're going to connect children and families with nature.
We'll all be dead by then, mate. We'll all be dead by then, innit? Slowly catchy monkey. That's what Boris Johnson would say.
Although
anyway.
I did hear someone else, a counter argument, and I'm not saying whether I agree with this or not, but there was a journalist, I can't remember where now, who was saying that most of the people in the Extinction Rebellion movement are under 20, under 18, 21.
Is that true?
At the point when he was doing this journalism,
right,
maybe.
Okay.
But he was saying that is a generation who have been told their whole life that the environment is about to collapse. And he said the worry is that they've learnt to. I'm not saying I agree with it, but he said the worry is that they believe it, whereas older generations might have had the same or similar messages, but have gone, oh right, they said that in the 60s, they said it in the 70s, and he was saying this is just the next movement of people. But I disagree. I do think climate change needs some action. Yeah. Pretty sharpish.
Something that's exciting about just activism in general at the moment is the involvement of young people, and that I just find so exciting. I kind of find, the whole Greta Thunberg being the kind of figurehead of this movement and being who she is, I find so inspiring and really kind of hopeful for the future. And the reason I decided to get a bit more involved in it, and I'm not very involved in it by any means, but I've been
the tattoo says otherwise.
Is because if you start really reading about it and you read the science, you can end up in this absolute hole of despair, and that even if it is just a thing to make you feel better, even if it isn't going to have an outcome which is in any way brings about change, I still kind of think it's worth doing. And they Extinction Rebellion locally will have small group meetings just so that families and people with these same worries, these same thoughts can be in a safe space together to talk, and they'll do lots of family activities and stuff for kids so the adults can meet like-minded people who aren't going to go, oh, you absolute freak, what you want about death cult, and so I can't. Yeah, at least you feel like you're doing something, and it makes you feel better. And I kind of feel like that is enough of a reason, and to raise awareness of it. And the fact that so many children were leading the march in Exeter that I went on, and they had the megaphones and they were chanting, and they were leading the chants, and the adults were responding. And there's an older woman there with a placard saying "Granny's care too," and it was that really interesting. I was sort of thinking, well, if they're doing this about this issue and have that confidence and that voice now while they're this age, what are they going to be like as a generation when they are the people in political power? And I just found that really exciting, because when I was a kid, I don't know about you, but I didn't feel like I had any power at any point.
No.
The most power you had was writing into Blue Peter and maybe your letter would get read out. Yeah. That was it. Jimmy Savile, Jim will fix it.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's an uncontroversial way to end it. What we're saying is, Extinction Rebellion is this generation's Jimmy Savile. Done.
Bye. I do actually have to go now, so that is actually bye. Oh, hang on. What did we need to say? We needed to say something. Oh, yeah. Okay, so there's a Facebook group for the podcast. I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Have you protested? Do you not? If you don't, why not? Are you an activist? What's happened? Have you been arrested? Tell us that story. I want to know. So yeah, join the
and you
conversation.
You are going, aren't you?
Going tomorrow. I'm going to check it out.
You're going to London.
I'm going to the London. So yeah, I will update with what it was like in it.
And the next
I'll
episode.
talk about it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Let me say bye now.
Bye bye.
If you're in the UK and you want to come down to Children of the Forest in person and do a little bit of training with us, we've got a load of dates on all the way through this next academic year. If you go to our Facebook page or our website, you'll be able to see all the dates and the titles of the courses, and make sure you've got your ticket as soon as possible. They're all small groups so that we can do as much personalised learning as possible. In March, we've got a course on storytelling, music and drama. In April, a course in general outdoor learning involving a level 1 in forest school qualification. In May, we've got an outdoor cooking course, and in June, we've got an introduction to whittling. And if you feel like going for the big fish and you want to start your own forest school or become a qualified leader, in April this year we're starting our level 3 training courses. So you can come down to Children of the Forest for a whole week and spend some time with me and Gemma and learn how to run a very own forest school. So to find out all the dates and to get booked into those courses, go either to our Facebook page or to our website, which is childrenoftheforest.com.